Hey, welcome back to Unity TV. In today's episode, we sit down with a local midfielder from Langley, BC. Let's introduce today's guest. He's a midfielder from Langley, BC, has played for Langley United and Surrey United for his youth career before joining Trinity Western University, and play as Jordan number 24 for Unity FC. Let's jump right into our sit down with Xander Roxburgh. And joining me now is Xander Roxburgh, the 24 midfielder from the Langley. Actually, is third year for Trinity Western University. They played number 24 for Unity FC this season. Xander, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. Super excited to be here.
I want to start off for you being a local boy in Langley, BC, where UDFC calls home. Talk about your journey playing football as a child growing up in the local area.
Yeah, so I've always lived in the Langley area. I moved when I was 3 from the Walnut Grove area into the Clayton Heights area. But the first thing I can remember about playing soccer is when I was 2 years old, my dad put a little soccer ball at my feet and I just tried to kick it. Obviously, it didn't go too well being a 2-year-old, but ever since then, grew up in the Langley Meadows area playing soccer at school, but also for Langley United in the grassroots programs there. I played a couple of years in the house league before there was any developmental leagues to play in, and then I think I played up a year in when I was supposed to be a U11. I played up a year for a U12 team. It was the gold team is what they called it. And then after that year, I ended up actually moving to Surrey United to play in the HPL league. Now it's called BCSPL. So I played at Surrey United for from 13 years old, 12 years old, somewhere in there until I graduated high school. And then ultimately moved on to Trinity Western, which is actually where Unity calls home as of right now. So, yeah.
You talk about like a lot of memories that really stuck out, that you remember your dad playing with you for with the ball and whatnot. And there's always like the certain moments where people like either as a fan or as a player who just sticks out to them as a memory, being like, I really want to play this game when I get older. What was that memory for you, either as a player or as a fan, that you were like, I want to play football?
Yeah. So other than that moment of having a soccer ball at my feet from 2 years old and on, my dad introduced me when I was really young to his favorite football club, Liverpool. It's actually where my granddad was born. And so the earliest memory I have of kind of just talking through what soccer actually is with my dad was probably when I was around 4 or 5 years old. And he showed me I think it was the 2004 or 2005 Champions League final where Liverpool ended up beating AC Milan coming back. They were down 3-0, and Steven Gerrard, who ultimately is my favorite player, led the charge back for Liverpool, and they ended up winning in penalty shootout and winning the Champions League over the powerhouse of AC Milan at the time. So that just talking through with that, and he showed me the highlights and stuff like that, and I was like, wow, that just inspired me to like be like, oh, I want to be like him. I want to be like Steven Gerrard, or I want to be able to play this game. And ever since then, I've kind of just always wanted to play soccer, and I even it's funny because I chose my favorite number actually is number 8. I know I wear 24 for Unity. I think it just ended up being the jersey size that the sizes were a little bit smaller and stuff like that. But yeah, number 8's always been my favorite number. And everyone's like, oh, is it because your birthday is on the 8th? And I'm like, no, it was actually because of Steven Gerrard. But it's coincidentally, my birthday is also on the 8th. So fun fact there.
A happy coincidence nonetheless. You mentioned already Liverpool being like the club that you had connection with your grandfather being born there. Talk about the style of football that you like to play. Is it very similar to the Liverpool style, or you have a unique style that you like to play?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to talk about style of football, I've always been a midfielder at heart. I've played a lot of different positions in my Trinity years up in the front six. And so my favorite style of play is to play like a number 10 or a number 8 and be a box-to-box. So most of my style is attacking and pressing and creating goal scoring opportunities, finding those passes that not a lot of people can find, and setting up my teammates for goals. So yeah, that's the type of football I like to play. I'm not actually, I was criticized a lot, and I've tried to work on my game in this sense of being more aggressive when it comes to defending and when it comes to getting into those tackles and those game-changing tackles, because obviously going in hard into a tackle can really affect the other team mentally. And so I've been encouraged to continue to build that side of my game, and I think I have been over the last couple of years. But yeah, most of it is an attacking framework where I try to look for goal. I try to look for my teammates making runs in behind and finding those pitch perfect passes, if that makes sense. So that's kind of how I love to play. And ultimately, Liverpool is one of the teams that likes to find those types of passes, like Trent Alexander-Arnold or Szoboszlai in the middle right now. Those types of balls that get played in behind for Mo Salah or for Darwin Núñez or Luis Diaz or Diogo Jota. So that's how I like to play football.
You've also mentioned several times with Liverpool, like how they play, and the fact that they took 30 years to win the top division trophy for the domestic league. Talk about, especially during COVID, a very unique year for all of us. Talk about even as a fan and seeing them lift the trophy for the first time in 30 years.
Yeah, I mean, it was the first time in my lifetime that I'd seen them win a Premier League. It was their first Premier League. The last time they had won it was the English League or whatever. And so, yeah, I was it brought tears to my eyes, actually, because obviously I've been a fan ever since I could remember. When I was 2 years old, my dad introduced me to them. So yeah, I soaked in every moment. I remember Snapchatting and Instagramming all my friends being like, I told you this was their year. Everyone had doubted. We're kind of like in that stage right now. Or I would relate it to how Arsenal fans have been over the last couple of years, in how they kind of dipped for a bit. And like growing up, that's where Liverpool was. They had kind of dipped. They weren't the team that they had been in the 90s era. And unfortunately, we had to watch a lot of frustrating matches. I remember my dad and I getting up at 4 a.m. and being ticked off because we got up so early just to watch our team get crushed by Manchester United or someone. But it was at that moment I kind of just was like, this is the feeling now that we're back up at that top tier. This is the feeling that I'm going to remember for a long time, because ultimately watching them grow from where they were when I was young into this powerhouse club again was awesome. It was the cherry on top to watch them lift the Premier League trophy.
And to boot, it was a very unique year, especially for COVID, and to have that pause and to start up again and still finish strong. It was quite the season, and one to remember for many occasions. Yeah. You'd mentioned that you have been part of Langley United, Surrey United, very local clubs in the Langley, BC area. You've also have now been in university. Talk about like going from that into Trinity Western and how that all that process has been for you.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, Trinity Western was my second home from when I was young. My dad's been a coach at Trinity Western for the women's team for a long time. So I was always out every week, every Friday night, every Saturday night. I was out to watch both the women's and the men's teams play. And so it had been my dream from a young age just to get the opportunity to try and play at Trinity. And so when I started talking with Mike, our coach, back in probably grade 10, grade 11, that's when the excitement really kicked in. I was like, okay, I gotta work hard these next couple of years to start to begin to make an impact when I get a chance to play for Trinity. And the transition ultimately wasn't what I was expecting because of COVID. And so my first year, it was frustrating. I never really got the capstone of my graduating youth year, U18, because of COVID. It shut down, and the last training session we had was like 8 guys who had showed up, and it was like an optional session because obviously everyone had different ideas on how deadly COVID was and all that kind of stuff. And so going into Trinity, the first practice I actually ever had was with 2 guys. It was me and 2 other guys with our coach, Mike. And we had to do social distance training, where we just did a lot of dribbling and passing. We had to stay as far apart as possible. But then when we got into the preseason of what we could have for the preseason, it was interesting because it was, again, non-contact soccer. So you have this competitive edge that you want to just play, you want to get after it, and here you are just working on the basics, right? And obviously the basics are super important, and that's kind of what I learned from that year. My first year at Trinity was ultimately just getting my wits about me, in the sense of what the pace was like, but also just returning to, it was almost like a rebuild in a sense because of that time off that we had for those 6 months of not playing. So it was a good like reset to get in to just start passing and dribbling, and then ultimately we got to play in some men's league games, but there was no Canada West season, and so I really call my first year my second year, and I also unfortunately fell right at the beginning of the season. I fell ill to COVID, and so I didn't get to break into the team until maybe 3 or 4 weeks into the season. But once I got in there and made my Canada West debut, it was a dream come true for me. I took it all in. I made sure that I played well, obviously, but at the same time, I was like, this is what I've been waiting for so long. So it was a pretty cool experience.
Well, it's always great to get perspective of how players go through that experience, especially COVID, because it's a once in a lifetime experience that not all of us will probably experience ever again in our lifetimes. And to hear a talk about that, it's not something you hear about or even think about in having non-contact soccer. Like it's unprecedented. And even like watching the Premier League or leagues across the world shut down or even going fanless, it was a unique experience for everyone. You definitely say, could you not?
Yeah. Yeah, honestly, like there's nothing, I won't be able to compare much to it again, right? Because ultimately now we're back to playing full football to its full capacity. And so we get after each other, we track each other down, get into some hard tackles at the end of the day, shake hands with your teammates and you say, let's go again tomorrow. So yeah, it was definitely an experience to just there was no competitive edge. You were competing against yourself to make sure that you could be the best you could be when it came to getting that first touchdown or making that pass as precise as possible, right? So very different mindsets in that year compared to the years building off of that.
So now you're in your third year. You've just completed your season. This summer, and I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, if you played last year as well for Unity FC. Talk about the whole experience. Like Mike is also the coach, being at TWU for the men's and for the men's for Unity FC. Talk about that experience of how he got you into Unity FC.
Yeah, so I think it was probably around my second year of school, first year of playing Canada West, where this club Unity got announced, and we were all kind of just like, what does that mean? And so ultimately, Mike kind of explained it a little bit to us, and he said, some of you guys will be invited. Ultimately, some of you guys come from other parts of the country, and you'll get to go back and play at respective clubs during the summer there. But being a local boy, I was like, okay, yeah, let's do this. Like whatever Unity is, I'm gonna work my hardest to get into this team. And ultimately, I got the invitation to play. And so it was super cool to be a part of the inaugural season of League One. And I think we were the inaugural game even against TSS at Swangard. Ultimately, it didn't go. Actually, we ended up tying that game. Yeah, I remember that. It was our first game of the season. We ended up tying. I remember actually having a conversation with Mike a couple of weeks before the season started. I ended up going to Paraguay and Peru. Probably, I think it was 2 weeks before the season started. And so right before going on that trip, I had a meeting with Mike and he was like, yeah, like, unfortunately you're going to miss some of the core practices, leading up to the season. And so just so you know where to come back into this team, I don't know how much playing time you're going to get to start off this season. And then I found myself in the inaugural game on like in the 18, and I was like, wow, okay, like I guess I can make an impact for this team. And so ultimately that was my goal, was to just continue to push my teammates. And unfortunately we didn't get a chance to build anything in that first season, but especially in the second season, our team was a little bit more gelled and we had a lot more time to prepare. I felt we started quite late for the inaugural season in training camp and stuff like that. But the second season for sure, we had a good month to train and to get prepared. And I think that's what ultimately helped us get into the playoffs that second season. So season number 2 is ultimately the highlight so far. And I'm looking forward to hopefully build on that this summer coming up. So,
and also it was a big adjustment for you for playing 11 games this season and even getting a goal. It was a unique, really fascinating game playing against Rivers. Even 7 goals in that one game. Talk about even that experience for you, that whole game experience, even getting that one goal for you.
Yeah, no, it was it's been my most significant goal for Unity so far. And it's interesting because you get on, I came on actually in the second half of that game. And I remember it was the Victory Shambucho show because we were playing in his hometown. And honestly, like watching Vic play is just unbelievable. You're just awestruck. You're like, wow, how does he get on the end of these types of things and score these goals? And so to be able to contribute to that game, it was an interesting feeling because we were already up. I think it was 4 or 5-0 at the time, but when I got on, all I could think about was just continuing to leave or pick up where my teammates had left off. And so ultimately I got the ball and I made some crazy turn that I don't even remember. I look back on the film and I'm like, how did I even do that? And then I just ran at goal and I took a shot. And I remember thinking as soon as I made connection with the ball, I'm like, that's going wide. That's not going to go in. And then all of a sudden it went in and I was like, what? I was quite surprised, but I was super happy at the same time. And it was a good cherry on top to finish the game 7. I think it was 7-0, or I believe that was the score. Yeah, 7-0. And so to be able to score for Unity is ultimately one of the bigger achievements I've had in my football career so far. And I'm looking forward to hopefully adding to that tally in the next coming year. So
being part of Unity for 2 years, you're also your third year at Trinity Western University. You already mentioned that having a dream come true for being part of Canada West. And now being part of the playoffs for Canada West, you've already accomplished a lot in your young career. Is there any big goals that you see in your career that you wish to achieve, whether it be part of League One BC, even the CPL, or even beyond? What kind of long-term goals do you see in your career?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately when I've been asked this question, I kind of tend to just say I'd love to ride soccer out as long as I can. So whatever way, shape, or form that happens, that's what I'm going to continue to pursue. When it comes to specific achievements, I'm going to strive towards continuing in my career. Ultimately, I'd love to win League One BC. We got close this year. Unfortunately, I think we ended up losing to Highlanders in the semis. But yeah, that it was a good experience and something we'll build on next summer. And then ultimately going into my last Canada West season will be next year. And so, I think my goal would be to try and make it to Canada West final, win that, and then ultimately move on to nationals and make a statement at nationals in my last year. There's a bunch of us who started in the COVID year that are going to be finishing up next year. And so I think it's our goal I think there's almost like 11 of us to try and leave the Trinity program with a staple of a Canada West win or a nationals win. So hopefully we can achieve that. Ultimately, it'll be up to us and working hard and putting in the hours on the training pitch, but also just banding together as brothers to pull off a late playoff run. So,
being part of Unity for the last couple of seasons, being part of Trinity Western those couple of years as well, there's a lot of life lessons people can take away, whether it's on the field, off the field, in life in general during that time, especially even during COVID. There's a lot of things that people can learn from. What is the biggest thing from these couple of years that you have taken away as life lessons?
Yeah, the biggest thing for me that I've kind of learned in this post high school into university and into Unity shift has been it's a good life lesson, but it also works really well in soccer. And it's ultimately there's a lot of talent when it comes to the teams that I play on. And being myself, I'm very hard on myself, and I want to get into that starting 11. I want to make an impact for my team. And ultimately, just based off of coaching decisions and tactics and different situations, you don't always get what you want necessarily. And ultimately, the team comes first. And so what I've learned in soccer, but also in life, is to just make the most out of the time that you get. So if you get 10 minutes, put your all into that 10 minutes, go and change the game in that 10 minutes, go and whatever it means within life or in the sport, just continue to strive towards greatness in that sense. Doesn't matter what others think about you. When you get on the field or when you have a situation in your life that you just need to grab at the scruff of the neck and just work hard to get through it. That's what I've learned, is to just constantly push forward and prove the doubters wrong in a sense. And so that's kind of what I do in my Unity playing minutes and also my Trinity playing minutes and other aspects of my life. So
you've also mentioned being part of a local boy being part of growing up in Langley and just being part of Langley United, Surrey United local clubs, and now being part of Unity FC in your backyard. How important is it to have local football in our own communities where we grow up from?
Yeah, I think it's super important, especially nowadays when you have lots of coaches and lots of opportunities for us as footballers to go and be coaches for that next generation. Yeah, I have teammates and friends and myself even who have gone to different schools and coached little kids. And I think it's just, yeah, it's an awesome way to just give back to the community and to reach out into the community. And I find it so much fun to just go and connect with kids, kick a soccer ball around, have laughs. And it made a lot of impact in my life. When I was a kid, I remember lots of Trinity students or there was even Whitecaps Academy players that would come and coach me at Langley. And I just remember having those little moments to cherish, but also to be like, okay, I want to be like you one day. And so that's what I think is super important when it comes to local football. Is it brings the community together and it allows the younger generations to kind of look up to something and be like, oh, there's a pathway forward for us in this sport. So that's what I find super cool about having local soccer here in Langley.
At Unity, we really believe that not only are we training the current players to go to the next level, but also future players, whether it be in Langley, the Fraser Valley, or anywhere in BC, or even outside. We look to train the best players to move on to the next place. What would be biggest advice you would say? You've already mentioned a little bit about life lessons you've learned. If there was different advice you would give to current UFC players or future UFC players, what would the advice you would want to pass on to?
Yeah, I think this has been kind of a staple within my career after graduation has been leave whatever you have, whatever you're going into, leave it better than you found it. And so if you get the opportunity to play on a university team or for Unity FC, take that jersey number that you have, recognize who had it before you, and continue to leave that legacy for that person and the people that are going to come after you to wear that same number. So just continually strive forward, bring positive outlook onto the situation that you're going into.
Well, we really appreciate your time, Xander, and thank you very much for this interview.
Yeah, no worries. It was super fun. Thanks so much, Lloyd.
Thank you so much for watching this video. If you like what you saw, give it a big old thumbs up for us. And make sure to follow us on our other socials right here. See you next time.